Hello, everyone, and welcome back to What in the World is Dyscalculia, the podcast that is all about the math related specific learning disorder. I'm Dr. Honora Wall, your host for the podcast, which is sponsored by EduCalc Learning. You can learn more about dyscalculia at educalclearning.com or at our partner nonprofit, the Dyscalculia Training and Research Institute, and that is thedtri.org. And what I want to talk about today in the podcast is one of our newest trending keywords in education that I hope picks up speed and more use. But first, we have to understand what it is. And the trending keyword is coherence. That can be instructional coherence or system coherence. And let's break this down. So coherence really just means everything matches. And for instructional coherence, we're looking for a through line from the lesson to the practice to the assessment where everything matches and makes sense. In system coherence, we're looking for alignment from the classroom assistant to the classroom teacher. Parents understand what's going on. Administration is on board. The guidance, counseling, and child find team are in alignment with everyone else in this system, and that is how we better benefit students. So clearly, having instructional coherence is going to benefit all students. It's incredibly important for neurodivergent students, especially those with dyscalculia. So that's what I'm going to focus on in this episode. So, how does this come about? And you might be thinking, well, isn't there already coherence? I mean, we're just talking about math. Not so much. And here's why. To say that we're talking about math and all of, let's just pick a grade, we'll say fourth grade, all of fourth grade has the same standards. And if you start looking at math standards around the country, they are all pretty much the same with one or two small differences on occasion. So shouldn't that already have coherence? Not so much. That's like saying, let's talk about food. And I'll even break it down to say, let's talk about lunch. So now I've narrowed it the same way we narrowed down to just fourth grade. Well, what does lunch look like for you? What did you have for lunch yesterday? What are you planning on having today? What could you have for lunch if you could have anything you wanted? For some people, it's a sandwich. For some people, it's a soup and salad. For some people, it's leftover lasagna. For some people, they're in a crunch for time, so it's running through a drive-through real quick. And for some people, it's a leisurely meal outside on the lawn enjoying the nice weather, if you don't happen to be in the current heat dome covering most of the USA. So, although we're talking about lunch, a meal that is eaten midday, and although we're talking about food, something you ingest for nutrition, we have widely different variations on what that might look like based on your personal interest, where you live, what is handy, what else is going on in the system. Do you have time for a nice leisurely sit down lunch? Are you crunched for time? You have to grab something on the go. So, all of those things impact something as simple as lunch. We have the same issue in math. When we look at any specific grade level, or even a specific school district, or even a school that has more than one math teacher, we get wide variations in how lessons are presented, what the practice looks like, and where the assessments come from. Now, side note, I am not advocating for a national system or curriculum. That is not appropriate. It would not meet the needs of all students. We're not maximizing individual strengths and weaknesses. And plus, here in the United States, we have a long history of grappling between federally mandated issues versus states' rights. So we're certainly not going to get into that conversation around math. Also, teachers are professionals, and we do need room in our classrooms to take a curriculum which gives us the outline and the structure and then teach it in such a way that it really comes alive for the particular students in our classroom at any given time. So I never promote scripted curriculum or programs for teachers. I find that offensive and insulting to the profession. So we do want room for teachers to be creative and to use their best tools to work with students. So then why am I even talking about coherence? Well, here's why. What tends to happen in many places is that there is a math curriculum being used. Could be a textbook, could be a series of worksheets, could be a program that the school has purchased, could be something different that the teacher comes up with on their own. Then we have practice. Sometimes the practice comes from the curriculum we're using, and sometimes not. Sometimes our practice is assigning outside computer-based programs, IXL, Khan Academy, there's a million of them. Sometimes practice comes from a parent enrolling their student in an outside training program, like a Kumon or a Mathnasium. All of those are different. So even though they might be talking about fractions, fractions is a huge topic. Are we writing them? Are we simplifying them? Are we using one of our four operations, add, subtract, multiply, divide? Are we setting up ratios and proportions? Are we using them to find the answer to word problems involving perimeter or area? I mean, there's a million different options that could occur under the very large umbrella of fractions. Here's where coherence can be a help or a hindrance. If you're using coherence to make sure that every question on the topic is matching, they're in alignment with each other, then we're going to get to mastery a lot faster. We're going to build confidence and we're going to make recall easier. But once we change the presentation, the question type, the focus area, the wording or setting within a problem, now we have some confusion. Is this exactly the same as what we did? How is it different? How is it the same? The tools that I just learned, are they applicable here? Do I need to do something different? How can I trust that I know what to do? That can go on in the mind of any student, and for those who are neurodivergent, it is amplified. There's a lot less confidence and mastery and trust in their skill set, and there are a lot more questions. And for a student with dyscalculia, it's amplified even more and can completely stop engagement, answering the question, much less getting it right. Now, then we get to the part of the assessment. And the assessment could be formal or informal, meaning it could be formals when you sit down with a paper and pencil or you sit down in front of the computer. Informal, having a conversation with the teacher, doing a project or a presentation, making a poster, something like that. And these could be, varying lengths, and they usually come from very different places. Is the assessment coming straight from the textbook that was used for the lessons? Is it also a worksheet generated off of a site that just listed simplify fractions and we have no idea how many fractions they're using or what kind of numbers they're using and it's a mixed bag all over the place? Is it an assessment that came from the district or the state or an outside company that has nothing to do with where the initial lesson or the in between practice came from? Now we don't have coherence. We're out of alignment. And this is usually a third area where students question, am I using the right tool for this? Is this the same as what I did before? It doesn't look exactly the same I'm not sure. What am I supposed to do? And how am I supposed to do it? And now we've thrown the student completely off their game. For students who have neurodivergent issues, dyscalculia, also sometimes anxiety, even if they don't have dyscalculia, then we start with the spiraling thoughts. And the assessment might as well be thrown in the trash. It's not going to give us any useful information because now the student starts thinking, I'm not sure I know what to do. I'm not sure I ever know what to do. I think I'm doing this whole thing wrong. I'll bet my last five answers were wrong. I keep failing these tests. I'm probably going to fail the whole class. I don't think I'm going to get into that high school that I want to go to or that college I want to go to. I think I need to change career paths. I don't think I'm going to reach my goals. It's probably because I didn't try hard enough or I'm just not good at this. And I'm so dumb. That kind of negative self talk completely erodes our ability to find information that we've learned, much less to apply it. And if you have dyscalculia, you need to hear me on this. You are not dumb. You are not the problem. Please play that part back. If you have dyscalculia, that is never a sign of low intelligence. It is not tied to that. It's completely different. You're not dumb. You're not stupid. It's not a lack of effort. It's probably a lack of coherence. There's the first problem. And it might be an instructional method that's just not best for the way you think about math. But we've talked about that in other podcasts too. Anyhow, how do we get more coherence throughout that instructional coherence piece? Well, sometimes you might be using a program like ours, the NBD math program, for no big deal, but also for neighborhood, and neighborhood is a mathematical term. We use a lot of instructional coherence from the very beginning of the lesson, through the video, through the practice, through every question in the assessment. If we're going to change the way we ask questions in the assessment, we've made sure to talk about it in a lesson and given some practice. So we really have that piece embedded throughout the program. You might be using another program that does the same thing. How are you going to know? Well, you as the teacher, or if you're homeschooling, you as the parent, you're going to look at the lesson, at the practice questions, at the assessments, and you're going to say, is there anything in here that's weird, that's off, that's different, anything that we did not cover yet in the lesson? Because before I test a student on it, I need to have told them what it is, and I need to have taught them how to do that work. That's the same as how it goes for adults. None of us are going to walk into a meeting with the boss and expect to be asked a question and called out on our performance for a task we were never told we were supposed to do. So let's just give the same consideration for our students. If you're using an outside program like the ones that I mentioned before, poke through them. Don't just sit the student in front of the computer or assign certain topics for homework and send them on their way. You need to go through there and make sure it matches what you covered in class. If it does not match, then you don't need to assign it. Maybe you could assign it for practice if you want to try a stretch. You want to see how many students are transferring knowledge to new and unique settings. That's fine, but that kind of practice does not go in the grade book. That's for your information gathering purposes. If you're doing an assessment that's coming from something that was not your original lesson curriculum or some of our state testing, I know those state tests and standardized tests tend to be on lockdown, which makes me question their validity because if we believe in what we're doing, we don't mind showing people what we're doing and having valid practice tests that are in alignment with what we're doing. But I've talked about that in other podcast episodes as well. But you're going to look at those practice tests and practice materials for those things as much as you are legally allowed to do, because teachers are not always legally allowed to see the assessments, which don't even get me started on that nonsense. but you're going to see how much does it match. And you might need to change some of your teaching methods to include that transfer, to say, let's have a conversation. What if the question was written this way? How about a question that looks like this? How do you know what tools you've already mastered? How do you know what to use? Have those conversations with your students. So, even in a mixed bag of approaches, you can help manage the cohesiveness by being aware, getting into those programs with your students and seeing what's in alignment and what's not. Let's talk real quick about system coherence, because sometimes we have a classroom teacher or assistant, or sometimes even the SPED assistant, the interventionist, who have never heard of dyscalculia, who hasn't had a lot of training in neurodivergence. So they may or may not be on board with the right interventions and accommodations. That's a problem. Sometimes we have a child find team. Sometimes we don't even have one on staff. Uh, Sometimes we're doing the best we can with our guidance department, but again, depends on the kind of training and exposure they've had. Do they understand dyscalculia so that they're making the right recommendations and that they're holding the teacher to the right standards and legal requirements as far as interventions and accommodations go? Is that true across the entire school setting? I've got a lot of students who had a teacher in one particular year who completely understood what was going on, was very supportive, worked with the student to find the best way they could learn and recall and demonstrate knowledge, and that was a great year. The year before and the year after, however, even at the same school site, the student has a teacher who does not have that same awareness. And now we have a terrible year. So when we start looking at foundational gaps, sometimes system coherence is a big reason why we have those gaps. Once we get to administration, is administration aware? I get very few administrators looking for training, and I know administrators have their own kind of training on how do you run the system of a school. But you really need to be aware of how your school should best support your struggling students. So I encourage you to look for more training for yourselves. But does administration understand the importance of accommodating neurodivergence properly? And are they on board with that? So all of those pieces can either come together to support a student to reach their maximum capabilities, or typically they don't work together at all. They're almost at odds with each other. And now the student is the one who suffers, not only in their performance, in their achievement, but also in their mathematical thinking and their mastery of math topics, also in their self worth and self esteem, also in their access to upper level math and science classes. So we have some really severe consequences when we don't have coherence. For the educators listening, if you have not seen instructional coherence pop up in materials, you're going to in the next year or two. It's really becoming a thing more people are talking about. So I want you to know exactly what it means and how you can create coherence yourself, whether or not your curriculum or your system supports that. And if you're looking to develop more coherence, you can definitely have a lot of control over that experience. Parents, you're probably not going to hear a lot of people talking about coherence, instructional or system wide, simply because that's not really your role unless you're also an educator. So it might be a new term for you, but it might be something that you talk about at the IEP and 504 meetings. You might ask some questions. Has the school really looked at the coherence of this model? And I have some concerns about my child because I've noticed that Maybe the classwork doesn't really match the homework. Maybe classwork doesn't seem to match the test. My student feels like it's very different when they're taking a test. Can we talk about that and how to help them see where to use the tools they've learned in class? Can we chunk assessments or use better wording in the instructions that are better aligned to what's happening during the instructional time? Those kind of questions will really help you support your students. So, instructional coherence is something you're going to be hearing a lot about. And now you know, and you can engage in that conversation with others. If you have questions about things like instructional coherence or about the NBD math program or dyscalculia in general, please reach out to me at any time. You can find me on all the socials. You can go to our websites and you can email me, Honora, HONORA, at thedtri.org. Thank you for listening to the What in the World is Dyscalculia podcast. We will talk again soon.